Welcome to Inside College Admission, conversations with admission leaders about matters affecting the college-going process. My name is Peter Van Buskirk, and I'm joined today by Heath Einstein, Dean of Admission at Texas Christian University. Welcome, Heath.
Thanks, Peter. It's great to be with you.
Glad to have you. So what's it like in Texas right now in the midst of the coronavirus?
Oh, it's about 60 degrees, lovely day out. Surely that's what you're asking.
Well, I'm just thinking that, this is a time of year for admission officers, we look forward to with great anticipation. We've admitted the class. We've got all these excited families coming to see us, and they want to love the college, love the university. They're ready to enroll. We're ready to have them enroll. And then, of course, you have another throng of students just waiting to get started for next year, and then silence.
Right.
What's it like on your campus right now?
Well, it's pretty empty. You and I are speaking, and I'm in my house right now because, of course, we're working remotely. Only absolutely essential personnel are on campus. And as essential as the admission office is to the heartbeat of a university, of course, without visitors, because the campus is not open at the moment, it's a little bit easier for us to be working from home. And so it's very different. I must say, I think that, our campus has come together really beautifully. And we're led by some incredible leaders who have helped thread together the social fabric of TCU and make it still a special place, even though we're not physically with one another. So I've been quick to say, we're not social distancing, we're physical distancing, because we're still very social with one another. We're just social via Zoom and other platforms.
Absolutely. Well, can you reflect with me a little bit on what maybe the last 2 to 3 months have been like for you and the leadership at TCU, as you could see this coronavirus thing just kind of growing out of nothing into a monster, and how the decision making has proceeded for you over that period of time?
Yeah. It's been really interesting because this is so unlike any other experience that any of us have had, not just in terms of the scope, that is something that's affecting everybody, but the escalation. And so I think we were on it pretty early, and thinking about how this might impact us, but I also don't think that anyone could have envisioned that we'd be sitting here on the 6th of April, which is when we're recording this, and where the campus would be empty, and we'd have virtual, this online instruction that has already been announced will take place through the end of the semester, and we're giving serious thought as to what the summer experience is going to be like for current students, as well as the enrollment process. But we have some intrepid leaders who have great insight. So I remember sitting in the chancellor's office with about, maybe 40 other people, when he said, okay, we're going to move to an intermittent period of online instruction to test out, whether we can do it, but also to give us a little bit of time to assess whether we're going to be able to, whether we want to move to this permanently. And as conditions changed, it became clear pretty quickly that we were going to need to do that. So when we made that announcement, it was the week of our spring break. The students were already off campus, and they were told, we're going to extend spring break by 1 week, during which time, yeah, right. So it's a good thing, I guess. During which time our faculty will convert 3,200 plus classes to online instruction.
Were they happy about that?
The students or the faculty?
Yeah, faculty.
Well, we have great faculty at TCU.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fair setup, but because everything I've heard so far has suggested faculty rallied in remarkable ways.
Oh my gosh! I mean, so wonderfully. And it was not an easy lift. I mean, consider if you're a faculty member teaching multiple classes, right? It's not like you can just switch one class and take a week and a half to figure out how to do that. I mean, you have multiple classes, multiple sections, and I don't know how they did it, frankly, but they have. And so we're here at the beginning of our 3rd week of online instruction, and we have had almost exclusively positive feedback from from students and from parents. And I think part of that is they realize that our faculty weren't trained to do this.
Right.
And they're taking classes that were meant to be in-person courses and trying to convert that versus making an online class, right? I mean, those are two totally different experiences from an instructional standpoint. So, no, our faculty have been fantastic, and everyone really has taken a all hands on deck approach to it. So it's been a positive, but there've been a lot of changes, and it's rapid change. I have calls multiple times a week with a emergency planning meeting with folks from all corners of the university community, because we sit in our little corner of the house and think almost exclusively about enrollment, but there's so much else that goes into making the university live.
What about your enrollment planning? Because I would imagine as this was developing, you're still in the midst of some pretty heavy decision making. At what point did you realize that you may need to take another look at those models, or are those models workable any longer? Because they're based on some assumptions from prior years.
Right.
So how's that affected the way you've gotten to where you are with your class?
Yeah. There is no model for this, right? I mean, you could talk to the smartest enrollment officers, the people who've been doing this for a really long time and who can, pretty thoroughly, to the extent possible, and accurately project what's going to happen. There's no model sophisticated enough out there using predictive analytics to know what the response is going to be in the market to something like this, especially because the market's changing on a daily basis. And so we had to go back and make some changes to our plan. And one of the crummy things about this, among many, is the timing of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Had this happened in October, before we started reviewing applications, I'm quite sure we would have come up with a different set of outcomes in terms of decisions that we made with our applicants. We were lucky in the sense that we had not yet gone out with our regular decision release once we knew that this was snowballing. So we went back and did make some tweaks, both in terms of number of offers, but also in terms of geography. I mean, our assumption is, and I think a lot of enrollment people will tell you, that there are going to be some families who are reluctant to send their students far away from home next year. Mm-hmm. That all else being equal, you know what? I think I'd rather keep my son or daughter a little bit closer, even if things improve significantly by the time the fall semester rolls around. I think there's this sort of subconscious effect that you know what, maybe we don't send the kid on a plane next year. Maybe we go driving distance. So we probably made a few more offers for students who live locally or within pretty close driving distance than we otherwise might have.
Have you extended your enrollment deadline or changed your enrollment deposit in any way to accommodate this current circumstances?
Yes, we were one of the early schools to move our enrollment deposit deadline to June 1st. And that picked up some steam a couple of weeks ago. And our line of thinking was, as the current public health crisis intensifies and the financial impact increases, that there are fewer and fewer families who are going to be ready to make the commitment that we ask of them by May 1st. They're still trying to get their lives in order. There are people who are caring for ill family members, who may have had family members who've already died as a result of COVID-19, and the normal day-to-day life that folks have to deal with. High school seniors should be worrying about prom and all of the fun end of year activities that they now don't have the privilege of experiencing. And I don't think that we can, I don't think it's possible to overestimate the impact that that has on the psyche of a high school senior. And so we felt like we needed to give these kids a little bit of extra time to adjust to online learning. They're doing what we're doing with our students. Many high schools are doing that. Many high schools have moved to a totally different grading system. And if you're an adolescent who's just coming into your own and trying to figuring out how to do high school, and then all of a sudden the modality changes, I mean, that has a real impact on people. And so to the extent that we're able to ease the burden of these families, we wanted to be able to do that. So we've extended to June 1. Who knows, what's going to happen. I've already expressed to folks in senior leadership at the university, as well as our team, that I anticipate, of course, this is going to be a summer unlike any other as well, that our enrollment of the incoming class, this class of 2024, is not going to end on May 1st or May 2nd like we thought it would when we got into the cycle, nor is it really going to end on June 1st or June 2nd, even though we have that deadline as well. I think it's very likely that we're going to go through the summer, and we're not different from other colleges in this way. I think it's a little bit foolhardy to believe that you're gonna close your class on May 1, except for a handful of schools who may be able to do that.
Well, it seems, especially as an institution that is interested in reaching out with generosity to the families that are affected by this, and realizing that there is so much upheaval, psychologically and otherwise, that you're bound to run right up until the start of classes, whether you want to or not, because folks just won't be able to see clarity immediately.
Well, right. There's that, and we haven't even mentioned the changes to NACAC CEPP, which very likely would have had a similar effect of movement during the summer, even without all of this other stuff happening.
Now, Heath, you threw some acronyms out there. Would you help listeners understand what happened and what we're talking about here? Because I'd like to have that conversation.
Sure, yes. So NACAC is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. It is the professional association of all stakeholders who are involved in the transition to and through higher education and in the enrollment process. So it is primarily made up of school counselors, independent educational consultants, and college admission officers. We adhere pretty strictly, or had adhered pretty strictly, to what formerly was called the SPGP, the Statement of Principles of Good Practice, and in recent iteration, the CEPP, which is the Code of Ethics of Professional Practice. And it laid out in pretty clear form how colleges and counselors ought to behave in the best interest of students. And a couple of years ago, as the CEPP was actually being finalized and enacted, the Department of Justice got involved, and they thought that there could be some issues with collusion, and that we would be interfering with the free market in allowing students and families to make choices even beyond that May 1 deadline. And there were several provisions in the CEPP that they looked at, but NACAC's assembly, which is the delegation that governs the group, basically had to remove elements of the CEPP so that the Department of Justice wouldn't come down on NACAC. It was an agreement that was made by some attorneys, and that was finalized at the conference in Louisville last fall. What that meant was that colleges, even when we got past May 1 and a student had submitted an enrollment deposit, I could, as another college, even though the student may have chosen to go to another institution, say, well, you know what? I know it's August 1st and you've decided to go somewhere else, but boy, I've got a good deal for you. Let me throw in a little bit more money to your financial aid package and sweeten the pot a little bit, as an example. And so we were already bracing for some late movement that in prior years wouldn't have happened or would be less likely to happen. I think a lot of admission offices, a lot of enrollment leaders were building in a little more summer melt than we would have had in the past. That is the number of students who end up depositing, or initially deposit, but choose ultimately to go to another institution. And so now, what will melt be when you combine these effects?
Right.
And who knows? So I think you're going to see a lot of schools try to hit a gross deposit number that is much higher than what they ultimately want their net deposit to be when census is taken in the fall.
And you did such a nice job of explaining all that. The fear is that there's going to be just an awful lot of a sort of wild west activity with regard to families looking for better offers, and for colleges and universities, poaching, if you will, kids who've already made commitments. So typically you experience that summer melt because of the trickle down institutions that might be a little more selective, taking kids from the wait list. Now it might bubble up a little bit too. But you touched on something else here too that I'd like to explore briefly, and that is the cost and affordability issue, a big factor. I mean, people who felt pretty comfortable financially 2 months ago now are wondering how they're going to make it through the next 6 weeks. How are you prepared as an institution to deal with that?
Yeah, if you look at the numbers of students who are submitting their enrollment deposits, and you slice the model by and colleges do this in a number of different ways, but if you slice it by ability to pay, that is, if you were to break it down to your highest need kids on one end to the families with either no demonstrated need or they didn't even apply for financial aid, what you'll see at colleges right now is a much lower number of deposits in those low need groups. Because when a family completed the FAFSA back in October when it opened, they were sitting pretty. They felt like they had saved and they were comfortably prepared to enroll at colleges that might be very expensive. And then we hit a situation like this and they're saying, okay, let's slow down a little bit, because now we're in a position where I think maybe we do need to apply for financial aid, or at the very least ask what scholarship money is available to me. And what I fear might happen, Peter, is that you'll get families who are savvy enough to ask the question, is there anything available for me? Realizing that they may actually be in a fairly powerful position, because colleges desperately want those students to fill those seats. And you've got other families who wouldn't even know to ask the question, and they say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother. I'll just go to another school entirely. And so I think the most nervous people on college campuses right now are the enrollment officers and the finance people, knowing that the budget might be in for a pretty big hit. And if you're in a position financially as an institution to be able to make some of those adjustments on the fly, that's great. But not every college is able to do that. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this all unfolds.
You see much waitlist activity this year?
Well, I think we're going to see a ton of waitlist activity. I know that there are schools that have already gone to their waitlist. The last couple of years, we've moved to our waitlist around the 10th to 15th of April. We went out with our first wave of waitlist offers last week, just in anticipation that we might need to have a few more offers on the table. And I think the thinking is you want to get those offers out as early as possible, because the earlier you extend, the more time you have to recruit those students and try to yield them.
Right.
It used to be, I mean, this change has happened so rapidly, Peter, as you well know. It used to be that you more or less waited till May 1st to see where you were,
Hmm.
And then over the coming weeks or months or whatever, then you went to your wait list. Well, I think the fear now is if you haven't got those wait list kids in your admit bin by the time May 1 rolls around, you're not going to get them.
Yeah. Wow. The uncertainty that surrounds just all aspects of your work is just amazing right now. So I would imagine that you've got some Excedrin or something nearby to keep yourself settled.
You know, people ask me all the time, even before COVID-19, people would say, what you have such a stressful job. What keeps you up at night? And I say, are you kidding me? I am so exhausted at the end of the day. Nothing keeps me up at night. I sleep like a champ.
Good for you. Well, back to the kids you've just accepted, since you're not worrying about you're sleeping well at night now. The kids that want to be on campus, want to kick the tires one more time, want to feel it before they make that decision, but now they can't. How are you accommodating those kids and their families as you're trying to enroll them?
This is the most important thing that we're doing right now, because April is a critical month on the college admission calendar, as
Mhm.
you know. It is a month during which 25% of all college visits occur, and 50% of those visits are first-time college visits. And you could be talking about either end of the college search spectrum, either students who've already been admitted and are making that last final push to make the decision of where they want to enroll, or students who are just starting the college search in earnest and they're excited to get that ball rolling. In either case, we are now unable to accommodate those students. I mean, I suppose the good news is we're in no worse position than anybody else, because pretty much all college campuses are closed at the moment. But what we have done over the last couple of weeks is converted all of our campus programming to virtual experiences. And that's another reason, by the way, that I'm happy we moved to a June 1 enrollment deadline. I'm not sure how these colleges are doing this with May 1 in mind, because it's taken that much time for us to ramp up, to be able to set up the Zoom meetings and get the parent volunteers and the student volunteers and all of that. So I feel like we've got a little bit more time at our disposal, but we're doing a whole host of things, everything from creating online information sessions that students can access at any time, specifically about admission. We've got a session on financial aid. We've got sessions on for our veterans. As a veteran-friendly school, we have a session specifically for them. We have footage that our students can look at with respect to housing and the first year experience, so orientation and our extended orientation programs. So there's a lot of that. We're also working with faculty. I mentioned this already, but our faculty is just spectacular. I have every department, more or less every department, creating 30 to 60-second videos welcoming students that we're emailing out to our admitted students by major, just saying, hey, we're sorry that you've had to experience this. We know you want to be here. Let me tell you briefly about the Department of X at TCU. Here's how long I've been here. This is why I love it, etc. We also have enlisted the departments to do Zoom sessions. So that would be for admitted students or prospective students. And we'll be hosting those over the next month. We'll have parent-to-parent sessions. So we're going to do like a wine and cheese kind of a thing, where I'll be moderating with the director of our parent services, and we'll have three or four current TCU parents leading a discussion, a Q&A with prospective parents at TCU. We're going to do the same thing on a student-to-student basis. And we're also offering one-on-one sessions with our admission counselors, and those have already started. We've been doing that for the last 2 weeks. So students can register for those and have 20 minutes, 30 minutes to just ask whatever they want. Nothing is the same, Peter, as being on a college campus and seeing it with your own eyes. And we have a lot that's out there on the web and on social media. I've done a Facebook Live. I told you about the Instagram takeover I'm doing today. There's a lot that we're doing. It's not exactly the same, though.
But it sounds like you're managing a lot of high-touch opportunities for these families.
Absolutely. It's the only way we're going to get people to enroll.
Excellent. Let's transition just a little bit now to the next group of kids, because no sooner than you have one class situated at TCU, now you have to worry about getting the class of 2025. Uh, and a lot of the things that you might have normally considered for the fall, visits to high schools, college nights, college fairs, open houses, credential review sessions, don't know if we can do them now. So how are you and your colleagues beginning to imagine your next cycle as recruiters?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the things that I just mentioned about those online opportunities, we are making available to juniors as well, and younger students too, because we don't know what the future holds. We'd like to believe that in the fall semester, our campus is going to be open and we'll be able to host students then. But I think we have to prepare for all alternatives, all possibilities. You mentioned college fairs. There is a company called StriveScan that's putting together a virtual college fair. They've partnered with many of the NACAC affiliates to sponsor this event that's taking place later this month. So we'll be participating in that. But we are already talking about what we're going to be able to do to reach out to school counselors and to students in the fall, should things remain in a similar condition to where we are right now. And I imagine that we'll be doing, that would include, if we end up going that direction, virtual high school visits, where we do something just like this, where I'm presenting to a group of students in an online format, and talking to them about what would make TCU a great experience for them, specifically coming from their region, their school, et cetera, and illustrating to them that we're sensitive to what they're experiencing and that we know their schools. I mean, part of the reason why we do high school visits is to personalize the experience for the students, right? I mean, you could come to see me at a college fair, but you're probably only going to get 30 seconds with me because there are a whole bunch of other people who are there, and I might not get to know you as well as I would if it was just you and I having a conversation, or me with a small group from a particular high school, where I could demonstrate to you, yes, I understand how difficult your school is. I've reviewed applications from your school for all these many years. I know your school so well that I could tell you who the difficult AP US history teacher is. That's how well we know your school. I don't think students really understand that admission offices get to know their school in that sort of way. Mm-hmm. And absent high school visits that occur sometimes in the spring, but certainly in the fall, we need to find ways to be able to still communicate the individual nature of holistic admission.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, when we talk about the kids who are prepping for next year, there are two concerns that they have. One is, how am I going to deal with testing? Because test dates have been canceled. I don't know when I'm going to have an opportunity to retake an SAT or an ACT. APs are going to be looking different this year. Are you contemplating any moves to accommodate the students who might be presenting what they believe would be less than strong credentials given their overall performance? In other words, they feel like if I'd had one more chance to take an SAT, my scores would have been up 50 or 100 points. So how much would be addressing that?
Yeah. So we actually announced last week that we are not going to require the submission of standardized tests for next year. Mm-hmm. We've suspended that policy for 1 year, the requirement. This was really a combination of factors, but probably the most, what the catalyst was of course the cancellation of the spring exams. Mm-hmm. Now, for students in other countries, the exams have already been canceled for many months. And so we knew that this was on the horizon at the international level. And once it hit domestically, I felt like we really had no choice but to go test optional for next year. You know that there's a movement in this country to go test optional anyway, and a lot of schools, probably about 1,000 by now, have gone in that direction. And so it's something that internally we had sort of tossed around. Is this something we might end up doing? But we weren't ready to make it a permanent thing yet. So one of the questions I've gotten since we made that announcement last week is, well, why aren't you doing what some schools have done and make a 3-year pilot? And I felt like we really couldn't make that choice unilaterally. Part of the idea behind shared governance is that you're not making decisions in isolation, but you're working with faculty leaders. And I felt like we could really easily and expediently say, we're going to suspend for next year, and we're going to take the time to really review whether this is something we would move to on a more permanent basis. There's a lot of data out there from schools that have gone in this direction in the past, but we want to give ourselves ample time to do that and not rush to judgment.
Yeah, well, good for you. And I remember from my years in admission at Franklin and Marshall, we went test optional, but it was only after a pretty thorough review by the faculty of what the possibilities would be, and we kind of dipped our toe in the water for the first year and then dove in for the second year.
Yeah,
it was a really positive experience. So I'm glad to hear you're measured in your approach. But
yeah, and I think yeah, and I say that with no commitment one way or the other. We're going to go where the data tell us we need to be, so long as that's in alignment with our university mission,
mm-hmm.
And our strategic objectives. I'll tell you the other reason why we suspended it was that we don't know when it's going to be back up and running. And so it would be one thing if we knew, okay, the tests are going to be canceled for the remainder of the spring, but we know with certainty August will be up and running, and that the tests will be available to everybody just like they always have been in spaces where everyone has access to it. I continue to be concerned about issues of equity when it comes to college admission in general and the standardized exams in particular. And I just have no faith that we could confidently say to high school juniors, no matter who you were, no matter where you lived, no matter what your internet access is or anything of the like, that you were going to have a fair shot at this thing. Mm-hmm. And so it actually made the decision pretty simple.
There you go. The other point of consternation for high school juniors is the essay. And I would imagine that a lot of times when kids approach the essay, they hear that there are taboo topics. Is coronavirus going to be a taboo topic this year?
I really don't believe in taboo topics, Peter. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've heard that for years, and you know that I spent 8 years as a college counselor in independent schools. So mm-hmm. I've worked really closely with students and parents over the years, helping the kids develop their essays. I think if you do a great job on an essay, the topic almost doesn't matter. And to try to move students away from what will absolutely be the most pivotal moments of their life really wouldn't be fair to their lived experience. So I would say to students, if they want to do an essay on what it was like to live through coronavirus and what impact it had on them in the short run or the long run, they should go for it. There are going to be a lot of students who say, I don't want to do this because I don't think my life has been defined by this experience. There were 17 years before this happened that I can talk about and that I think are really more relevant to who I am and what I hope to be. And I think for those students, they're well within their right to write on whatever they like. But no, I've never believed that there's a topic that students should shy away from.
Well, I find that refreshing advice and to students very reassuring too, because the last time you want to, as a student, you don't want to be feel like you're being boxed in terms of what you can write about or not. So
there's one other thing that I hear students fretting over, current high school juniors. So in addition to the tests and the essays, and that's grades.
Yep.
Because as I mentioned before, a lot of high schools are choosing to move to a pass no credit mm-hmm. Grading system, sort of moving away from a traditional A through F or 100-point scale or whatever scale that the school was already using. And students are concerned, well, if I get a pass, are you going to make an assumption of what that means? Does it mean that I just barely passed, or does it mean that I really would have gotten an A or just being upset, like I was getting an A up until this point and now it's turning into a P. What does that mean? And so we have already determined that we are going to not penalize students for a decision that's beyond their control. We're not going to assume the worst about students. In fact, we always try to assume the best about students. And if you earned a P in a particular class, then it shows you are proficient in it, and that our assumption is that you're going to be able to do the work. And so those students are going to be eligible for admission and academic scholarship just as they would be. And I should say this doesn't just affect high school juniors, because if you're a ninth grader, you still are going to have that on your transcript by the time you finish high school. And so we haven't developed any sort of methodology or assessment tools, but what we have developed is a commitment to doing right by the student.
It seems like the academic year 2019-2020 will be the one that has an asterisk on it for many years, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we offered our students pass no credit for the rest of this semester as well. So how could we in good conscience allow TCU students to do that without affording high school students that same opportunity?
If you were to talk with a 17-year-old now, a young person who's kind of bewildered by things going on in the world and also confused about how to approach the college process as a result, how would you talk to that high school junior about college planning? What advice would you offer?
Well, I think the first thing I would want to do is ensure that they're in a good place mentally. Mm-hmm. This is an unprecedented period, and I'm always concerned about mental health issues with adolescents. Anyway, it's a problem that has grown in recent years. You see this on college campuses all over the country, where you've seen a tremendous increase in the number of mental health professionals who are helping students, and that's a good thing. But there's a need for it, and so we have to deal with that. And so I do worry about what this means for the collective. But as far as the actual college search process goes, I wonder if there is going to be a sort of coalescing of what really matters. Students go into this process with their typically with their eyes wide open, and hopefully doing a really critical self-analysis to understand whether they want to be close to home or far away, and do they want to be on a more geographically remote campus or something that's more city-focused, and all of the usual questions. And I think that in my experience, most students are pretty adaptable, and they don't have a good sense at age 17 of what's really important to them. This may have the effect of helping students clarify even earlier what matters. Mm-hmm. And in that way, maybe there's some benefit to the college search for the student. So I suppose what I would say to them is, think about what your priorities are, truly. What are you looking for, not just in the college itself, but what do you hope the college is going to achieve for you? And how can you leverage the resources at that institution or at these institutions to ultimately have an outcome where we see the best version of who you are, and you're able to reach that.
Great advice. Great advice. I appreciate that. We're going to wrap things up here, but before we do, is there a resource to which you'd like to point folks? Your website for TCU, the admission page. Maybe I'm giving it all right now, but assuming that folks come out of this conversation wanting to know more, where would you send them?
Oh, this is the free advertising part of the session. That's great. So there are a few places to look. I think that I would go to admissions.tcu.edu, has a lot of great information. I would also use social media. We have a Twitter account and an Instagram account at TCU Admission. Also just the general TCU page on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But I would pay a particular attention right now to the hashtag TCU Together, because I believe that in moments of crisis, that a person's or an organization's true character is revealed. And if you go to the hashtag TCU Together, you're going to see amazing examples of resolve by members of our campus community throughout this ordeal. And so that's probably where I would point people.
Excellent. I think I need to check it out myself. Very good. Well,
Good.
thank you, Heath, for taking some time from your busy day to share your thoughts and perspectives on life in the admission process, especially during these times of crisis. For those who are interested in hearing this again, you can find it on the Scoir website and on YouTube. But thank you again for contributing, Heath, and for those of you who listened in, thanks for being with us. Until the next time, be safe and have a great day. Take care.
Bye-bye.